Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It's Monday. It's the start of another week, a new week. A week see Arsenal play Crystal Palace twice in just a matter of days. First in the Carabao Cup quarter-final, of course, on Wednesday night, and then in the Premier League at the weekend. So we'll look ahead, certainly to the Cup game a little bit later on in today's show. Got lots of comments and questions from you guys, as always, as well. We'll talk about what's been a pretty mad weekend in the Premier League once again. Crazy results, especially for the not just in Europe, not just for the Premier League, but across Europe, really, in terms of teams who have had Champions League football and their results in their domestic league that have followed on from it. I think it shows the difficulties they're going to have in navigating throughout the season. So we'll look at the Premier League a little bit later on in the show as well. But I want to talk about the transfer window. Obviously, we are now, what's the date today? The 16th of December. So we are just over 2 weeks away from the January transfer window opening. And as we edge towards January, I think it's certainly going to be a crucial month for Arsenal in terms of how the second half of this season is going to pan out. Obviously, you don't want to do too much business in January. Every club will tell you that. Every club executive will tell you that when you sit there and you talk to them and you go, what are you going to do in January? The first thing they always say is, look, you don't want to do much in January because if you do, you're sort of reacting to stuff that isn't going pretty well in the season, blah, 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 blah. And it's much easier to get your targets in the summer. I get that. And I do 100% I get that. But I think when you look at where Arsenal are right now, you look at the squad that they have right now and the issues that we're seeing with the squad in terms of how that's impacting performances and results as well. I do think it is impossible not to look at January as being really, really central to how Arsenal's season is going to pan out from this point. If you don't do anything in January, it's difficult to see Arsenal maintaining a challenge for what they want to challenge for over the second half season. Not impossible. I wouldn't sit here right now and say if Arsenal do nothing in January, they're not going to be able to go on and really sort of try and win the Premier League still. They're not going to have an opportunity of winning the Champions League or the FA Cup. But I think it's going to be difficult, much more difficult than if you can try and solve something. The message coming out of Arsenal ahead of the January transfer window is always going to be, we're going to be reactive. It's going to be a reactive window rather than the proactive one, which again goes back to what I'm talk about. Every club executive, everyone who's in terms of deals with transfers at football clubs will always want to wait until the summer when you can get your proper targets, when you can really plan. Anything you do in January shows you're panicking a little bit and reacting. And again, I understand that. But in Arsenal's situation now, when the season is not done and dusted by any means, there is still an opportunity for Arsenal to have an unbelievable season this season. But it does feel like January is going to be absolutely crucial to that. I mean, you look at the squad that Arsenal have right now heading to January window. This is from Arsenal.com, obviously. So it's missing a couple of players who aren't listed on here. And I'm talking about Ethan Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly, because they're still listed on the youth pages. But they are a part of this first team squad, obviously. But you look at where the squad is right there in terms of Arsenal. And you look at how things have panned out over the last few weeks in terms of results, performances, how Arsenal are playing. And you look at what was done in the summer and how it hasn't really had an impact so far this season. It's impossible not to look at that squad and think Arsenal need to improve in an attacking sense. They need to find something that is going to improve them in an attacking sense that you can add to this squad and just make it a more rounded, more threatening looking squad over the second half of the season when the games are going to continue to come thick and fast. We're right in the middle of it now and it is not going to stop until the next international break. It is a game every 3 or 4 days consistently through until March now. So the demands on the squad it's not going to lessen. It's going to stay as much as it is now. And there is definitely areas there where Arsenal can improve and give themselves better options. Because when you look at the forwards, for example, Raheem Sterling obviously added in the summer, isn't even being used. He might get used in midweek in the Carabao Cup, but when it comes to the Premier League, he's not being used. When Arsenal need a goal in these tight games, they're searching for a goal. Sterling's not trusted to come on and make the difference. So that is that he's added nothing to Arsenal's squad this season. But you've taken out players who got quite substantial minutes. Nketiah, Smith Rowe, they weren't starting or anything like that last season, but they still between them totted up minutes that were important, not just in terms of trying to do something themselves, but lessening minutes of others elsewhere. You took that out of the squad. You took Fabio Vieira out. You added Raheem Sterling, and that was it. And you're not using him. So you can't look at that and think, right, that's been a success. He's going to help us over the second half of the season. There is no signs to suggest that Arteta is even going to trust Sterling to use him over the second half of the season, or B, that if he does use him, that he's going to make a massive, significant impact. So Arsenal have to look at that and think that's not worked. We've got to fix it. So when you're talking about being reactive rather than proactive, surely this falls into the reactive categories. What we did in the summer didn't work. It's not giving us enough options up top. The other forwards aren't firing at the moment, and yet we've got no one who we can really rotate them with, because who we signed in the summer didn't work out. So surely you have to react to that. And that's why I'm looking at this January, as looking a really, really crucial period for Arsenal. You look at what Mikel said, and this was in Friday's press conference ahead of the game against Everton. This is what he said about the window, whether it was going to be a busy one for Arsenal. He said, "I never expect January to be super busy, but we have to wait and see where we are. Some surprises can come. We are prepared for that. Some opportunities as well. And we have to see. Hopefully, the squad availability is going to get better in a few weeks. So we'll have to wait and see." I mean, that last line, obviously, they're saying seems to be suggesting, look, if our injured players come back, then we're not going to have to do too much. But all those injured players really are in defence. It's not going to impact the attacking options too much. And that's where Arsenal need to improve. It's clear, you look at recent games, it's clear Arsenal need other options up front, whether that be the central striker that so many people are crying out for, or whether it be, which is where I tend to be right now, more creative player who scores goals, creates goals from a slightly deeper area, who can give Arsenal just something else in the final third that they don't really have at the moment, especially when Martin Odegaard's off form. So when he says some surprises can come, we are prepared for that. Some opportunities as well, we have to see. You've got to be ready to take those opportunities. It might have to be a loan deal, again, that just sort of falls into place and can work. But you've got to be ready for that. And the more I look at January right now, I just think it's so important for Arsenal. And I really do hope they do something to turn around how the season's going. Because if they don't, then it's going to be a real struggle for them. Obviously, there's no sporting director at the moment in place, permanent sporting director in place at the moment, but Jason Ayto is doing the job. I thought this was interesting from Arteta when he was talking in before the Everton game again on the sporting director situation going into January. When he was asked about it, he said, "We have one. Jason Ayto is our interim sporting director, and he's got the full capacity and support of the club, and he's doing really well with his team." Then the process is open. Obviously, as you know, and the club, with the support of all of us and the intervention of us all, will decide who they think the best person is to move forward. He was asked if there's been any progress. He said, "I'm sure there's been progress, yeah, on when it will be resolved." He says, "Timing-wise, it's difficult to understand. I'm not running that process. It's far more a question to the club to respond to that." He also added in his answers about this that maybe the solution is an internal one again, and that points towards maybe he's thinking that Jason Ayto is the guy who could take over. As I've spoken about many times, with all the links to the sporting directors, the Roberto Alaves, the Louis Camposes, the Dan Ashworth links that are going on at the moment. With all of that, it's still, as far as I'm aware, anyway, relatively early on in the process, and Jason Ayto is definitely involved in that process and could potentially be a candidate. It felt like what Arteta was saying, that he could well be his pick. We'll wait and see if that has any sort of bearing on the end result when it comes to this process. But I don't really look at the sporting director issue right now and think that's going to impact them in January. Yes, it would be ideal to have who you know is in charge for the January window. It would make things smoother, you would think. But Jason's been around for a long, long time. Eddie's had him under his wing for a while. Jason has been involved in transfers before at Arsenal, heavily involved in them. He knows how it works. He knows the list of targets that Arsenal have had and the players that they've been looking for in terms of maybe January, but certainly the summer as well. So it's not like he's coming in from anywhere new. He's got good contacts within the game. Edu has made sure that he has built up those contacts base while he's been sort of having him under his wing at Arsenal. So I don't think that necessarily is going to impact Arsenal's January. And it could be a real opportunity for Jason here. If he's looking and he wants this job on a permanent basis, if he can go out in January and find something, a solution to Arsenal's problem, if he can go and have conversations with people and suddenly bring something to the table, to the board and to Arteta and to the Cronkies and say, "Look, I've got this option for us in January. I can get a deal done," and whoever he signs comes in and has a massive impact. What better way to earn yourself the job on a full-time basis than doing that? So he's got to look at January as a really big opportunity as well here. So I think it's an opportunity for Arsenal to strengthen in areas that they definitely need to strengthen to kick on in the second half of the season. But I also think it's an opportunity for Jason Ayto to potentially thrust himself right to the front of this process when it comes to potentially being Arsenal's next sporting director. So I definitely think you've got to look at January as a big opportunity for me, where you can really improve things at Arsenal at the real time when it looks like they are needed. Love to get your thoughts on that, by the way, in terms of what you think Arsenal should do in January. And you've got to be realistic on it. You can't just say, right, Arsenal go out and spend 250 million in January, sign Mohamed Kudus, sign Gyökeres and everyone like that and bring them all in at the same time. That's not going to happen. It might well be that Arsenal have to end up looking at loans in January and then going in the summer. I'm not saying that's definitely what it's going to be, but it might be what you have to do. January is notoriously difficult to navigate. You definitely have to do something, I think, but you be realistic when you're saying in terms of what you think Arsenal need and could do in January that could really help boost the team over the second half of the season. I mean, you look at the Premier League table right now as it stands after yesterday's results. Liverpool 6 points clear. Chelsea moved to within 2 points from Chelsea can go top next game because Chelsea play before Liverpool. They win that game, they go top of the Premier League. Which will be the first time, I think, since 2021. On a real good run of form, Chelsea at the moment. I think it's 5 straight wins after that win against Brentford. They've done what Arsenal needed to do after the international break. And it looked like Arsenal were on course to do until the last week. They've got some momentum. I think it's 5 wins in a row for Chelsea in the league now. That's what Arsenal needed. And unfortunately, the draws against Fulham and Everton have stopped that in their tracks. But, I've seen a lot of white flag waving going on at times within the Arsenal fan base over the last couple of days since the Everton game. But you look at that league table, it's impossible to rule Arsenal out of this Premier League title race. They're only 4 points behind Chelsea. If Chelsea are in it, then Arsenal are definitely in it. They've just got to find a way of winning these tight games and doing it very, very quickly. And that's, again, why I fall back to how important January is going to be in terms of this team going forward. City, obviously, another bad result for them and losing the Manchester derby 1-0 up with 3 minutes to go. You end up losing that game. I mean, unbelievable turnaround there. Big calls by Amrim as well. No Rashford, no Garnacho, which is surprising. I really like Garnacho, I've got to say. Something must have gone on behind the scenes there for Garnacho to have a big falling out to not be in the squad at all. But fair play to Amrim. Good win for them, even if it was a bit of a mad one the way it happened. And Man City's struggles continue as well. And you look at around Europe, you look at results of teams who are in the Champions League in midweek and how they got on. I mean, Liverpool obviously dropped points this weekend, albeit with 10 men. Arsenal dropped points this weekend. Manchester City dropped points this weekend. Aston Villa lost this weekend. All of the teams in the Champions League, none of them won in England in the Premier League this season. You go across Europe, I think Bayern Munich lost for the first time this season. This weekend, Barcelona lost this weekend as well. It's just a real struggle. It is, and you're gonna have to deal with it. You got to find a way around it and dealing with this schedule, but just shows how difficult it is. And Chelsea, obviously, yes, they were in European action, but very, very different to Arsenal. They were in the Conference League. They didn't play a lot of their players in that league. You don't have to worry about it. You can leave your first team players behind, which they've been doing, and it's obviously helping them and keeping them fresh at the moment. But yeah, I mean, you look at that league table, it is not done and dusted yet. There is still a really good opportunity for Arsenal here. They've just got to get some momentum back. So this game's going to be absolutely crucial at the weekend against Crystal Palace. Win that game, go into the festive period on the back of a win, and still anything is entirely possible. Arsenal play before Liverpool as well this weekend. So you win that game, you move within 3 points of them, albeit only for a day. That could add to the pressure. Again, we'll have to wait and see. Before that game against Crystal Palace, they've got a game against Crystal Palace, as the way the fixture scheduling works. 2 games against the same team in the space of a few days. One at the Emirates in midweek, obviously in the Cup, and then one in the Premier League at Selhurst Park at the weekend. Interesting to see what Mikel's going to do for the game in the Cup. I think you've got to take this seriously. I'm going to talk about this more in tomorrow's show, obviously, as we really start to focus towards the game. But I think should be a real priority, this, for Arsenal. He will make changes. There's no doubt about it. But I don't want to see massive wholesale changes. Palace for the first time this season are in a decent bit of form. They had a brilliant win yesterday away at Brighton. I think they're unbeaten in 5 maybe in all comps now. So they are finding some form. They're not going to be a pushover by any means. They're going to be very, very confident coming on Wednesday night. So you can't make massive changes, but you've got to look at this and take it very, very seriously for me. This is a real opportunity for Arsenal to get themselves into a semi-final of a cup competition here and get yourself 2 games away, because this is a 2-legged semi-final, isn't it, from Wembley. Silverware is going to be massively important for this Arsenal team. None of them have won any yet here. I mean, Bukayo Saka, I think, was the only one probably who was involved in the FA Cup, and he didn't even play in that game. So this is an entirely new squad that hasn't won silverware together at Arsenal. Got a real opportunity now. Wembley is within touching distance. You've got to take it. So he will make changes. Raheem Sterling, I expect, will probably start that game. I imagine Ethan Nwaneri will get the nod from the start as well. Gabriel Jesus up front. So there will be changes to the team, but I still think he'll go strong. It's not going to be a team of kids sent out there. He'll go strong, and he should go strong. So let me know your thoughts on it in terms of what you would do for the team selection for Wednesday night, what you think Mikel should do. How strong a lineup do you think he should make? Should he make any changes? Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Right, moving on to some of your questions and comments before we wrap this one up today. Aaron says, "Hey Charles, with almost half the season gone, do you think our summer transfer business was a failure? Neto never played as a backup goalie and isn't available in the League Cup. Marino well below expectations, while Sterling's hardly got any minutes as well. Calafiori the only bright side, and he gets many minor injuries. Half our signings aren't contributing for our season, which is a big concern considering we signed Havertz, Rice, and Raya last season, where they all performed at their best. Timber very unlucky. If there's one position you can sign in this winter, which position do you think we should strengthen?" As I said, I still kind of feel like I want another striker. I do want Arsenal another striker. They need one, desperately need another option. I just still feel that's more likely of a summer thing. To get the player you really want is going to be a summer thing rather than January. Even the game against Everton, looking at it, I just felt like they need something from a deeper position, or from get a real firing left winger who's, Trossard and Martinelli clearly struggling for form at the moment right now in terms of what they're delivering, and that's putting an awful lot of pressure on the right-hand side. Can you find a left winger who's going to come in and improve things massively, or who could play in a central, could be a goal threat, create chances? I still feel like that might be the area that Arsenal need to focus on in January rather than the striker, but I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that. In terms of the summer business, was it a failure? It's tough. I mean, the way you look, it's looking like it at the moment. Definitely, it hasn't worked so far. It hasn't improved Arsenal. So I suppose you look at that and think, yes, it was a failure when I go and say something like that. But I think there are circumstances. Obviously, I don't think it matters that Neto's never played a game as a backup keeper. He was brought in to be a backup keeper. Ideally, you don't want him to play any games. Maybe the odd one in the cup. Yeah, that was a bit of a shame. But I don't think it's any issue that Raya's playing in that one anyway. And he didn't even play in the first one. One of the youngsters did. Just the fact he's not playing in the Premier League, that's not seen as a failure. It just means that David Raya, thankfully, hasn't been getting injured. So I don't look at that as an issue. Marino, yes, he's been below expectations, but I also think he was so hampered by injury when he came in anyway. That wasn't ideal. And so I'm not ready to write off him. Sterling, obviously, been an unmitigated failure so far. The fact that Arteta's not using him when you need minutes, and he's your only attacking signing in the summer, and it hasn't worked out, and you're not even using him, then definitely that is failure. So yeah, you look back in the window, and I said it at the time, didn't it? It looked like Arsenal had left themselves short when that window shut in the summer, and there's nothing that's happened since then that's made me change my opinion on that. They definitely left themselves short, at least one short, and then the fact that Sterling hasn't worked means they're at least probably two short in an attacking sense. So yes, it hasn't had the impact that you would have wanted it to have, definitely. Johnny says, to defeat a low block like Man City used to do in their prime, you need players who can play between the lines with excellent first touch, can play on the half turn and play in triangles. What you don't need is players with only speed like Martinelli. What about surprising the opposition by bringing on Waneri for Martinelli and Jesus for Havertz? I'll even bring on Sterling for Saka in the last 10-15 minutes. You have Odegaard, Waneri, Jesus, Marino in either Rice or Partey. You'll surely find a way, because those guys are skillful and can affect one another with their style of play. They'll demand the ball to feet and drag defenders out of position. The coach needs to be innovative. He's too rigid for my liking. It's good points. Definitely. Do you need the way that Arsenal are struggling at the moment against these teams? You do need to find something else to get past them, and Arsenal haven't been able to find the key to doing that on a regular basis. They do it at time. You get yourself an early goal, obviously everything changes. But when you don't get yourself an early goal and you get into a game like you did at the weekend against Everton, can you find the key that can unlock that sort of defence? And Arsenal have notoriously struggled at it in the last couple of seasons. So do you need to try something different? And I agree, those sort of players that we saw for Man City over the recent years, your Fodens, your David Silvas before that, obviously your Bernardo Silvas, those sort of players, they're so good. Kind of back in the Wenger days, wasn't it? When you had Jack, Nasri, Rosicky, Kleb, all those sort of players who could do it and spin on the half turns and could unlock teams with their triangles. Haven't really got that in this Arsenal team right now. And maybe that is something you need to potentially bring in and add to. That's why I was quite excited when Arsenal signed Fabio Vieira, because I thought he was going to be that type of player, but it didn't quite work out that way. A couple here on the striker situation. Ronnie says, Charles, Isak's goal versus Liverpool, ball plays up to him, he turns and puts it in the top corner. That's what top strikers can do to create their own chances. Look, I agree with that 100%. That's why Alexander Isak is my number one choice for Arsenal to sign. Abdul says, hi, Charles, I'm as disappointed in the result of the weekend as anyone on here. I've got to say, I also disagree with you to some extent on Haaland not being able to do for us as much for us if he was playing in this team at the weekend. First off, I say we don't need anything like Haaland, and not to say he isn't good, but I'll say if we had a skillful striker that can create his own chances like Osimhen, Gyökeres and Isak, then I'll say it could have been different in some of our games that needed killing off. We don't need a striker like Haaland, because he's the kind of striker that only works when others work and puts the ball on a silver platter. I hope we go into the market this January. Enjoy the weekend, everyone. Good points, well made. And yeah, look, I absolutely know that Arsenal need another forward. Isak, Gyökeres, it would definitely improve this squad. I would love Alexander Isak, and you can be a striker who can do something out of nothing. All I was saying was after the weekend, the way that panned out, how deep Everton were playing now, there was no space to run in behind them at all. That I just felt like it didn't really matter what striker was on the pitch. It would have been a struggle for them in that instant. But of course, that you can always do something like that out of nothing, especially the top strikers. And that point Ronnie makes there about Isak's goal against Liverpool was a very good one, and it can happen. And I would absolutely love Arsenal to sign Alexander Isak. It would make them immeasurably better. There is no doubt about that. And finally, from Yevon on the WSL, Arsenal, really good win at the weekend, obviously against Liverpool. 7 wins on the trot now under Rennie Sleggers. And Yevon asked if about whether Arsenal should give her the job to the end of the season to see what she could do. Team looks very united now under her, playing very freely. And you're right, it's fantastic run of results. Another good win against Liverpool in the WSL. Really good to see Alessia Russo scoring so many goals now and looking so prolific. She's obviously thriving under Renee Sleggers. So do I think Arsenal should give her the job to the end of the season? I don't see why not. There's nothing. Results and performances are showing that they are performing under her, and they seem to be absolutely sort of lifted. And there's not this sort of weight on their shoulders that maybe they were playing like when Jonas was in charge. So she's put herself in a fantastic position to get the job on a, if not a full-time basis, certainly till the end of the season, and then potentially on a full-time basis. And I would have no problems with that. If there's no one out there in the hunt for the manager job, which they're currently doing, they can't find anyone who's available, or they really think you're the right person for the job, then absolutely the players are thriving under Sleggers. They're playing very well under her, clearly respect her, so give her the job to the end of the season. I'd have no issue with that. I'm pretty sure no one would, to be honest, the way the team is performing at the moment. So yes, well done to the Arsenal ladies. Great win against Liverpool at the weekend. And that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for your time, as always. Really do appreciate it. I hope you're having a good start to the week, wherever you're watching this around the world, or listen to it, of course, on podcast. I'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again, and we will start to really focus on that game against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup quarterfinals. Until then, have a great day, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.